You stood at the bus stop, watching a family in the park across the street. The mother and father were laughing and playing with their small children, maybe around 5 years old. A tight feeling gripped your chest. As you watched them, a feeling you knew too well. You never knew what it was like to have parents, abandoned at birth. You had grown up in an orphanage, raised by people who were kind, but it wasn't the same as having a family of your own. You blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears before they could form. Not today. You whispered to yourself, "You are stronger than this." It wasn't the first time you felt like this, and it probably wouldn't be the last. Just then Jungkook arrived. Your heart did a little flip, the way it always did when he was around. He was your bad boy crush, the heartthrob of the school, with his black leather jacket and piercing gaze. Made girls swoon, but there was something about him that gave you a kind of escape. Even though he was distant and cold, just looking at him made your worries fade for a moment. Jungkook stood a row ahead of you, his tall figure hard to miss. You quickly wiped any trace of sadness, putting on your usual act, the one where you pretended you didn't have a care in the world. You often used your crush on him to distract yourself from the pain inside. You looked at him with hopeful eyes, smiling shyly, then almost playful. You moved behind him, trying to measure your height against his. You did this almost every day, hoping he wouldn't notice, but deep down you knew he did. Today he finally spotted. "You can never beat my height," he said, his voice low and steady. "Stop wasting your time." You froze, startled. He wasn't even looking at you, but his voice was enough to make your heart race. You quickly stepped beside him, trying to act normal. "Good morning, Jungkook," you said softly, your eyes full of admiration. He barely glanced your way. He hummed, his tone cold and indifferent. As usual, he never gave you much attention, but you were used to that. You suddenly remembered something important and fumbled with your bag, pulling out a book. "Oh, here, take your book, I finished it," you said, holding it out to him while he smiled. You had borrowed it from him a few days ago. He took it without much thought, shoving into his bag without even glancing at it. "Don't you want to check it?" You asked, feeling a little nervous. You had drawn a teeny heart on one of the pages, hoping he might notice. "It's fine," he replied, still not looking at you. "There is nothing new to check." Your heart sank a little at his words. You had hoped for at least a small creation, but there was none. He acted as if it didn't matter, as if you didn't matter, but you didn't show your disappointment, instead forcing a small smile. "Well, I thought you might want to check the notes I wrote." You tried again, hoping to make him talk. Jungkook's eyes flicked toward the road, pretending to be on the lookout for the bus. "I'm sure they are fine," he said, still cold and distant. You bit your lip, feeling the sting of rejection but trying to brush it off. He was always like this, cool and untouchable. But even with his distant attitude, there was something about him that drew you in. He was smart, always topper in university. And even though he acted cold, he never ignored you when you asked him questions about schoolwork. That's what made you special, at least in your eyes. He talked to you even if he didn't want to. I was actually wondering, you started nervously, about that math problem we had in class yesterday. I couldn't figure it out. You looked at him with hopeful eyes, waiting for his response. For a moment, he didn't answer, and you wondered if he was going to brush off you like he did with everyone else, but then he spoke. "What part didn't you get?" he asked, still not looking at you directly, but at least he was paying attention. "The part where we had to solve for x after factoring the equation. I just couldn't get it right." Jungkook sighed, finally turning his head towards you. "It's easy. You just need to remember the steps. First, factor the quadratic equation, then isolate the variable." His explanation was simple, but the way he said it made you feel like you were the only person he was willing to help, even though he acted like it was nothing you knew. He didn't explain things to just anyone except you. "Alright, I will try again later," you said, feeling slightly better. "Thanks, Jungkook." He shrugged, looking away again. "Whatever." The bus arrived shortly after, and as everyone started to get on, you found yourself following behind him, your heart still fluttering. Even though he was distant and cold, there was something about Jungkook that made you want to keep trying, keep hoping for a little more. The bus ride had just started when you overheard Mia, the most popular girl in school, complaining to her friends Maddie and Sadie. Mia's car had broken down and she had no choice but to ride the bus, which she absolutely despised. I swear, I'm going to tell my dad to fire the driver, Mia exclaimed, crossing her arms dramatically. Can't he be more careful? I shouldn't have to deal with this. Maddie and Sadie nodded along, trying to console her. That's so unfair, Mia. You shouldn't have to take the bus, Maddie agreed. It's just for today, Sadie added, trying to lighten the mood, but Mia was too upset to care. You stood near the front, holding on to one of the rails as the seats were all taken. Jungkook was two rows behind you, standing as well since the bus was packed. You couldn't help but glance over your shoulder every now and then, stealing looks at him. He was leaning against the bus wall, arms crossed, looking as cool and distant as ever. Even in a crowded, noisy bus, he seemed to exist in his. As the ride continued, you felt someone bump into your shoulder. You turned irritated only to see a guy looking at you with wide, apologetic eyes. Sorry, he muttered, acting innocently. You sighed and nodded, deciding to let it go. It wasn't a big deal. But then it happened again. This time the guy pushed against you harder, making you uncomfortable. You frowned but didn't say anything. Instead, you moved forward slightly, trying to give him space. Yet, instead of stopping, he kept inching closer to you. Your heart raced in discomfort, and you didn't know what to do. Just when you thought you would have to speak up, Jungkook suddenly stepped in. He moved between you and the guy, blocking him from coming any closer. Startled, you turned around and saw the guy sulking behind Jungkook, now unable to bother you anymore. You quickly realized what had just happened. Jungkook had protected you. Thank you. You whispered to Jungkook, your heart fluttering with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He didn't look at you. I didn't do anything. He replied casually, his voice calm. It's just hot back there. I wanted to move up. He tried to brush it off like it was no big deal. But you knew better. Jungkook never liked showing that he cared. The bus rumbled on, but your mind was still on what just happened. He had stood up for you. It was a small moment, but it meant more to you than you could express. Suddenly, the bus jerked forward with a sharp brake, causing you to lose your balance. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion as you fell backward, bracing for the impact of hitting the ground, but instead of falling, you felt strong arms around your waist, pulling you up. You collided with Jungkook's chest, your heart pounding. His hands were firm, holding you securely, not letting you fall. You were so close, close enough to feel the warmth of his body, his heartbeat steady and strong beneath your ear. Your breath caught in your throat as your eyes met his. The world around you seemed to fade away. It was just the two of you locked into this moment, everything else disappearing like distant noise. His dark eyes, usually cold and distant, seemed different now, like they held something deeper, something unspoken. And your heart felt like it was flying, lost in the intensity of his gaze. In this fleeting moment, time did freeze, your arms, the heaven where I found my ease, the world, though rushing, seemed to fade. In your gaze, all my fears were laid. A silent promise, a fleeting glance, could this be more than just a chance? In your arms, the chaos subsides, and in your heart, a secret hides. Jungkook blinked, snapping out of whatever trance he was in. He quickly let go of your waist, standing you up straight. You felt the rush of reality return, your cheeks burning with embarrassment. Thank you, you stammered, your voice barely audible. He cleared his throat, looking away again. It's nothing, just don't fall next time, he said in his casual, cool tone, but there was a hint of something else in his voice, something softer. He cleared his throat, looking away again. It's nothing, just don't fall next time, he said in his usual cool tone, but there was a hint of something else in his voice, something softer. Before you could say anything else, you caught a glimpse of Mia from the corner of your eye. She was glaring at you, her eyes filled with jealousy. You knew that look all too well. Mia had always liked Jungkook, but he had never paid her any attention, and now seeing you so close to him, her anger was written on her face. You swallowed, trying to ignore Mia's furious expression. Even if she was upset, you couldn't control how Jungkook acted. All you knew was that for the first time he had made you feel noticed, like you were the only person who mattered in that moment. As the bus continued to its destination, your mind couldn't stop replaying the way Jungkook had looked at you, the way he had held you. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to him than the cool bad boy person he always showed to the world. As soon as you reached school, you headed straight for your locker. The familiar sound of metal clinking filled the hallway as you pulled out your books. Just as you were about to close the door, you froze. Mia was standing right in front of you, arms crossed, her eyes narrowed. You knew exactly why she was there. You had no interest in picking a fight with her, so you decided to avoid the confrontation. You sighed, closing your locker door and turning to walk away. But Mia wasn't going to let you leave so easily. Are you trying to escape from me like a coward? She called out, her voice laced with arrogance. That stopped you in your tracks. You hated being called a coward, and Mia knew it. Slowly you turned back around, crossing your arms as you met her glare head on. What do you want, Mia? You asked, trying to keep your voice calm but firm. Mia stepped closer, her face full of anger. Don't act like you don't know why I am here. I have told you 100 times to stay away from Jungkook, but you just won't listen, will you? She snapped. You rolled your eyes. This again, it was always the same with Mia, her obsession with Jungkook and her ridiculous need to control who was around him. And why exactly should I listen to you? You shot back, your tone sharp. Her two friends, Maddie and Sadie, gasped in surprise at your boldness. No one usually spoke to Mia like that, but you were tired of her games. Mia's face twisted in anger, and she took a threatening step closer to you. Mind your words, she hissed. Do you even know who you are talking to? You were intimidated. I know exactly who I am talking to, and I don't care. Just because Jungkook doesn't pay attention to you doesn't mean you need to be jealous of me. Let me enjoy my treat. Mia's eyes widened in shock, and her friends exchanged nervous glances. You could tell they didn't expect you to fight back, but you weren't in the mood to play nice anymore. Mia had been acting this way for too long, and you were done with it. You shook your head, glancing at the time. I have work to do. Move, you said simply, brushing past her. As you walked away, you heard Mia's voice behind you, low and filled with worry. Not now, but one day I will teach you a lesson. Just wait for the right time. You ignored her threat and kept walking, heading toward your classroom. You weren't going to let her scare you, not today. Mia might think she had power over everyone in school, but you weren't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing you back down. As you entered the classroom and took your seat, you felt a small sense of victory. You had stood your ground and it felt good. No matter what Mia said or did, you weren't going to let her control your life, especially not when it came to Jungkook. The class had already started, but your mind kept wandering. The teacher's voice was droning in the background, but your eyes kept finding their way to Jungkook, who was sitting a few seats away from you. He was fully focused on the lesson, scribbling notes. You couldn't help but sneak glances at him. His dark hair fell perfectly over his eyes, and the way he held his pen made you smile unconsciously. But then suddenly Jungkook caught you staring. He put his pen down and raised his eyebrow at you, silently asking, "What?" Your heart skipped a beat, embarrassed. You quickly shook your head and looked down at your notes, pretending to focus. You could hear a soft chuckle escape from Jungkook, and you bit your lip, trying not to smile. That small laugh of his irritated Mia, who was sitting a few rows ahead, pretending not to notice. The day moved on, and soon the bell rang, signaling the end of the classes. As you were packing your books, you spotted Jungkook in the hallway. He was walking calmly when a group of basketball players passed by, their loud voices filling the corridor. "Hey Jungkook!" "John," one of the players called out. "Wanna join us for a game of basketball?" Jungkook didn't even slow down. "I'm not interested," he said coldly without looking back. John shrugged, but Sojun, another player, decided to poke fun at him. "Leave him, John. He's probably heading to the library. You know, the guy is a total bookworm," Sojun said loudly so everyone could hear. A couple of the guys snickered and Sojun smirked. I heard his parents don't even feed him if he doesn't score top marks. What a poor life. Must be tough, huh? He added mockingly. Jungkook stopped in his tracks, his jaw clenched, and he turned to face Sojun, his eyes dark with anger. Don't you dare involve my parents in your jokes, Jungkook said, his voice dangerously calm. But Sojun wasn't finished. He stepped closer, giving Jungkook a hard shove on the chest. Or what? You gonna cry to them? Jungkook's patience snapped. In a flash, he threw a punch straight at Sojun's face, making him stumble back. Chavos erupted as the two began to fight, tears flying. Jungkook was furious, and though Sojun fought back, it was clear Jungkook had the upper hand. The hallway was filled with gasps and whispers as students watched the fight unfold. A teacher rushed in, pulling them apart. Both Jungkook and Sojun were dragged to the principal's office, still fuming. The tension between them was thick, but the fight was over for now. Later you heard the news that both of them were sitting in the principal's office waiting for the parents to arrive. You couldn't help but worry about Jungkook, even though you knew he didn't care about the consequences. But one thing was clear, no one messed with him, not even Sojun. Jungkook and Sojun stood in the principal's office, both looking down as their father stood beside them. The principal's voice echoed through the room, filled with frustration. Principal, your boys need to learn some manners. This is a school, not a boxing ring. I expect your fathers to teach you proper behavior, or next time you will be expelled. Jungkook's father, Mr. Jung, looked stern and didn't say a word until they were outside. He grabbed Jungkook by the arm, pulling him aside to a private corner where no one could hear them. What is this, Jungkook? His father snapped, his voice sharp with anger. Am I sending you to school for the stupid fights like a child? Jungkook's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, staring at the ground. I have told you countless times, his father continued. Focus on your studies, not on these low-class fights. If you ever get into a fight again, don't think I won't send you away from this family. You are ruining my reputation. The words stung, but Jungkook didn't show it. His father glared at him one last time before walking away, leaving Jungkook standing there alone, fists clenched. You had been watching the whole scene unfold, hiding behind the wall. You peeked around the corner just in time to see Jungkook punch the wall in frustration, his knuckles turning red from the impact. You wanted to go to him, but you knew it wasn't the right time. Days passed and Jungkook seemed to change. He no longer got into fights, focusing only on his studies. You noticed how distant and quiet he had become, and it made you sad. You knew he wasn't getting the love and attention he deserved from his parents, and that weighed heavily on your heart. One evening, you were in the library, sitting in your usual spot with a book in hand. The silence was comforting until you suddenly heard loud voices coming from outside, confused. You got up and went to find your friend Meena. Meena, what's going on? You asked, your voice filled with concern. Meena looked at you wide-eyed. Don't you know Jungkook is picking a fight with Sojun again? It's serious this time. Before she could finish, you dropped your book and ran out of the library, your heart racing. You knew this wasn't good. Jungkook had been trying so hard to stay out of trouble, and now he was back to fighting with Sojun. When you reached the spot, you saw a crowd gathered around them. Jungkook and Sojun were in the middle, ready to throw. You pushed through the crowd, desperately trying to stop them. Jungkook, stop it! You shouted, but he didn't listen. His face was twisted with anger, his eyes burning with rage as he glared at Sojun. You tried again, grabbing his arm. Please, Jungkook, stop! This isn't you! But it was like he couldn't hear you. He showed you off, focused only on Sojun. In that moment, frustration boiled inside you. Without thinking, you slapped him across the face. The crowd gasped in shock. Jungkook froze, his hand still raised to punch Sojun. His eyes widened as he slowly turned to face you. Disbelief filled him all over his face. I'm sorry, you stammered, your voice shaky. I didn't mean to, but before he could finish, Jungkook's expression hardened. Without saying a word, he walked away, leaving everyone, including you, stunned. You stood there, your hands still tingling from your heart heavy with regret. What had you done? You hadn't meant to hurt him, but your frustration got the better of you. Now you were scared of what he might think of how much damage you had done. The rest of the day felt like a blur. You tried to find Jungkook wanting to explain, wanting to apologize, but he didn't give you the chance. Every time you saw him, he either walked the other way or acted like you didn't exist. That night, as you lay in bed, your mind raced with guilt. You had only wanted to help him, to stop him from making a mistake, but now all you felt was regret. You buried your face in your pillow, wishing you could turn back time and fix what you had done. You were sitting quietly in the library, engrossed in a book. The place was almost empty, and the peaceful silence suited you just fine. That was until the light suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness. Your heart skipped a beat as panic began to race. You were scared of the dark. Grabbing your phone, you switched on the dim torch, the weak light barely easing your nerves. You stood up, trying to calm your racing heart as you walked toward the main entrance. Anybody there? You called out, your voice trembling slightly, but there was no response, only the unsettling sound of silence. You reached the door, feeling a wave of confusion wash over you as you tried to push it open, but it didn't budge. It was locked. Why is it locked? You muttered in disbelief, pulling at the door handle in desperation. Hello, is anyone there? Please, open the door, you shouted, hoping someone would hear you, but the only answer was the echo of your own voice. Little did you know, Mia and her friends Maddie and Sadie were outside the library, laughing quietly to themselves. Mia smirked, crossing her arms. Now let's see how she will get out of this one. She slapped Jungkook, huh? Well, now he will. Her when he finds out I locked her in here. She tossed the key away and walked off with her friends, leaving you trapped inside the dark, airy library. Inside, you were starting to panic, your breath quickened and your hands were trembling as you tried to find another way out. You were scared, really scared. Suddenly, you felt a hand on your shoulder. Ah! You screamed, your voice echoing in the empty space. You turned around in terror. Please don't harm me. I don't want to die so young, you pleaded, shutting your eyes tight, bracing for the worst. But then you heard a familiar voice, low and teasing. Don't worry, even ghosts aren't interested in you. Your eyes flew open and you were shocked to see Jungkook standing there instead of a ghost. You whispered his name in disbelief. Jungkook. He didn't respond at first, walking past you toward the door. He tried to open it, but like you had no luck, you couldn't help but wonder why you were stuck in the library with the one person you weren't sure how to face right now, the bad boy of your school. He began searching for tools to help open the door while you stood there watching him. You felt the need to talk to him to explain the fight incident, but he wasn't giving any attention. It made you nervous, but you knew you had to say something. Just as you gathered enough courage to speak, a lamp from the ceiling started to fall. Before you could react, Jungkook grabbed you and pulled you away from the spot. His arms wrapped tightly around you as the lamp shattered on the floor where you had been standing. You found yourself pressed up against his chest, his arms still holding you protectively. You both locked eyes, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped. Your heart raced faster, and you could hear his heartbeat thumping just as loud. But reality hit when you both quickly pulled apart, awkwardly clearing your throats. Jungkook broke the silence, his voice low and serious. Why did you slap me? You felt a lump form in your throat as guilt washed over you. I'm sorry, Jungkook. I didn't mean to hurt you. I saw your father warning you that day, and as someone who doesn't know what it's like to have real parents' love, I didn't want you to lose yours. That's why to stop you from going too far with Sojung. You lowered your head, feeling ashamed of what you had done. You knew your intentions were good, but still, slapping him in front of everyone wasn't something you could easily take back. But then Jungkook stepped closer to you just then lights turned on. He lifted your chin gently, making you look into his eyes. There was no anger in his gaze, just something softer, more vulnerable. I love you, he said quietly, his voice full of emotion. You froze, shocked by his words. Jungkook, you whispered in disbelief. He nodded slowly and gently as wine. I love you from the first day I saw you on the bus. That's why I keep riding the bus even though I have a car. I just wanted to see you every day. You're the only one who makes me feel something real. And you don't know how happy I feel when you draw heart shapes in my book. I was waiting for the day that when we get closer. Your heart fluttered, overwhelmed by his sudden confusion. Jungkook continued, his voice turning sad as he glanced away. About the I don't mind, I know you did it for my own good. And as for my parents, they love their business more than they will ever love me. I have accepted that. You step closer, your heart breaking for him. I understand, Jungkook. Some parents just don't deserve the children they have. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Jungkook shook his head. It's okay, but why? I can't replace that love I lost from my parents, but I promise you, I will love you with everything I have. What I didn't get, I will give to you. Tears filled your eyes and you couldn't hold back your emotions any longer. Jungkook, I love you too. You whispered, your voice trembling with sincerity. Tears formed in his eyes as well, and he gently kissed your face. From now on, we have each other, he said softly, brushing your tears away. You nodded, smiling through your tears, and Jungkook leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to your forehead. Then he pulled you into his arms, hugging you tightly, as if he never wanted to let go. The lights, your happiness flooding the room, but in that moment, all that mattered was two of you finally finding each other in the midst of the darkness. Thank you for watching.